Okay, so this is the temperature changes required practical. Now, this is all about investigating the variables that affect the temperature change in chemical reactions, right? And the example I'm going to go through is where you have an acid and an alkali. Right, so the equipment that you need hydrochloric acid, HCl, you need sodium hydroxide solution, which is NaOH. So obviously the HCl is the acid, the NaOH is the alkali. Polystyrene cup and lids. It's put on here styrofoam, okay, I normally call it polystyrene, and a styrofoam cover. The thermometer that then goes into liquid, and a stirring rod to make sure that the mixture is kind of mingled together so you can get the correct results. Then what you do is you get 30 centimetre cubed of dilute hydrochloric acid. Alright, so that is then our number one. Okay, 30 centimetre cubed of dilute hydrochloric acid, and you put it into the polystyrene cup. Use the thermometer to measure the temperature of the acid. Right, so that is then before you start anything, and it's basically working out room temperature. Then what you do is you get 5 centimetre cubed of sodium hydroxide. You put it in and you work out the highest temperature. Then what you do is you get ready another 5 centimetre cubed, and then once it's got to its highest temperature, you then put the next one in. And then you do another 5 centimetre cubed, and what you then do is you put it in. And each time you put in an extra 5 centimetre cubed, you've just got to watch to see how high the temperature goes and record it on your results table. You keep on doing that until you've done 40 centimetre cubed of the sodium hydroxide. Then, once you've done that full experiment then, wash it all out, repeat the experiment for a second trial. Now, another way that you could do it is you could have your 30 centimetre cubed of hydrochloric acid in there, and then you add 5 centimetre cubed of sodium hydroxide into there, see what temperature it gets to, wash it all out, and then you repeat it again as like experiment number 2, where you have 30 of acid and 10 of sodium hydroxide. Right, that is another possible way of doing it, but in all kind of the information and textbooks and all those kind of things, what they do is they always talk about doing it this way, where you start with 30, throw in 5, throw in 5, throw in 5, throw in 5 until you get to 40, recording the highest temperature every single time. Once you've then done it twice, you do a mean, which I've written there. Okay, so always remember that if you're going to do any sort of required practical, always talk about what you're going to do with your results. You calculate a mean, and then what you do then is you plot a graph. Now, the variables, just to run through them, don't mess in class. So the dependent variable is what you're measuring during the practical, is the temperature. The independent is then what you change, is the amount of sodium hydroxide. The controls are the amount of acid, it always stays at 30, the thermometer, the cup, how you stir it, you know, all those kind of standard things that you make sure that you keep the same. Now, this is then what your results table will look like. That is your starting point. Then what you do is you add 5, add 5, add 5, add 5, add 5, and then you look at the temperatures as it goes down. So with 10, with 15, 20, etc., etc. And then what you do is you do a mean. So it'd be 20, add 21, divided by 2, which would then be 20.5 degrees C. Then you get a graph. Okay, now they might give you all the points, they might give you some points, they might ask you to plot it, they might ask you to do a line of best fit. Now with a line of best fit on this one, right, you can see that it isn't a perfect straight line. So if I was going to be doing this as a line of best fit, right, what I would do is I would do a curve, because it kind of looks like a curve, right? You don't necessarily have to join all the dots up, right? But then what you're going to do is you're going to get a curve that looks like that. Now, one thing that I always question in my head is, right, I can understand why if I keep on adding more sodium hydroxide, what happens is it gets hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. It makes sense. But then when it gets to this point here, even though I'm still adding more, it's potassium hydroxide on this graph, even though I'm adding more potassium hydroxide, the temperature then goes down. Now, the reason for that, and what you've got to do is you've got to kind of picture in your head a little bit. At this point here, it has got to, let's say it's 33 degrees C. Okay, that's the hottest temperature it's got to. It's not exactly 32, right, but it's pretty much 33 degrees C. That's the hottest it's got to. And at that point, all of the hydrochloric acid has been used up. So there is then no more reaction then going on. So now what you've got is you've got an excess of the potassium hydroxide. And what you're now doing is, there's no more reaction going on, so it's still at 33 degrees C. You're then adding in cold potassium hydroxide. So there's no more reaction, so there's no more energy being given out, but you're adding cold potassium hydroxide, which is then going to make the temperature then go down, which is then the reason why the temperature goes down here. And it will keep on going down until it gets to the temperature of room temperature. Okay. Now, I like that practical, right, because the practical's got lots of stuff in it, right? You've got a good method that then you can write. And you've just got to make sure that when you are writing your method, you're doing every single little point as clear as you possibly can. Then what you're going to do is you're going to repeat. Then you're going to do a mean. Then you're going to draw a graph. And then you're going to do a conclusion. So make sure you can then talk about every single little step, and also don't forget your variables, because at some point on an exam to do with a required practical, you will have to talk about your variables.